And welcome to Afghanistan Institute for Strategic Studies. Today, we have the honor of having Ambassador Hugo Llorens, who's a special Chargé of the U.S Embassy here in Kabul. Before proceeding to start formally the event, there is a tradition at this institute that we start our events with a Sufi prayer. I would like to ask our colleagues to play that part of the program.
ای با من و پنهان چو دل، از دل سلامت می کنم. ای با من و پنهان چو دل، از دل سلامت می کنم. تو کعبه ای هر جا روم، قصد مقامت می کنم. هر جا که هستی حاضری، از دور در ما ناظری. شب خانه روشن می شود، چون یاد نامت می کنم. گه همچو باز آشنا بر دست تو بر می زنم. گه چون کبوتر بر زنان آهنگ بامت می کنم. گر غایبی هر دم چرا آسیب بر دل می زنم. گر غایبی هر دم چرا آسیب بر دل می زنم. ور حاضری پس من چرا در سینه دامت می کنم. دوری وطن لیک از دلم، اندر دل تو روزنه است. دوری وطن لیک از دلم، اندر دل تو روزنه است. زان روزنه دزدیده من، چون مه پیامت می کنم. ای آفتاب از دور تو، بر ما فرستی نور تو. ای جان ارمهجور تو، جان را غلامت می کنم. من آینه دل راز تو اینجا سقالی می دهم. من گوش خود را دفتر لطف کلامت می کنم. در گوش تو، در هوش تو، و در دل پرجوش تو. در گوش تو، در هوش تو، و در دل پرجوش تو. اینها چه باشد؟ تو منی، وین وصف آمد می کنم. ای دل نه اندر ماجرا می گفت آن دل بر تو را. هرچند از تو کم شود، از خود تمامت می کنم. ای چاره در من چاره گر، حیران شو و نظاره گر. بنگر کز این جمله صور این دم کدام گه راست مانند الف، گه کش چو حرف مختلف. یک لحظه پخته می شوی، یک لحظه خامت می کنم. گر سالها ره می روی چون مهره در دست من، گر سالها ره می روی چون مهره در دست من، چیزی که رامش می کنی زان چیز رامت می کنم.
Thanks to our colleagues, our technicians. Now I would like to invite Dr. Muradian, Director of Afghan Institute for Strategic Studies, to deliver welcome notes.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. با عرض سلام و صبح بخیر خدمت خانم ها آقایان. از همه شما عزیزان و دوستان سپاسگزاری میکنم که دعوت انستیتوت با وجودی که ماه مبارک رمضان است و ما در روزهای آخر این ماه هستیم و خستگی غلبه میکند بر خیلی از ماها، با وجود از این دعوت ما رو پذیرفتید، از همه شما سپاسگزارم. اگر اجازه بدیم چون برصد مهمان ما هستن صحبت‌ها خود به انگلیسی ادامه بدم که ادب مهمان نوازی ایجاب میکنه. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the Afghan Institute for Strategic Study. We are very grateful to all of you who accepted our invitation on such short notice, and the fact that we are in the last day of Ramadan and the exhaustion is catching us with many of us here. Nevertheless, you accepted our invitation and we are very grateful to all of you. I'm also very grateful to Ambassador Llorens to accept our invitation, because he is also a very busy man, and he just told me that he's responsible for not only U.S. diplomacy here, but nearly thousands of U.S. civilians, workers, agencies. So he's also is busy, but despite his busy schedule, he accepted our invitation. And I think it's the second time that you are here. Remember that you came in 2013 and we had a joint event with NISA and we delivered a remark. I think it was there. So welcome back to the AISS. Ladies and gentlemen, as we know that in Washington there is a new administration, and as we have been hearing from the news, the new administration has been any new administration would start looking at the U.S. engagement, U.S. policy towards different countries, including in Afghanistan. And we know that Afghanistan, I think it is the sixth president of the United States that Afghanistan is the one of the priority for U.S. national security, starting with President Carter, President Reagan, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, and now President Trump. And for the last 40 years or so, Afghanistan has been a priority in Washington for different reasons, and each administration start reviewing the U.S. policy in Afghanistan with some shared questions. I worked with two presidents team, George Bush and President Obama, when I was working with Dr. Spencer, and in my capacity working with the Afghan government. What I come across, the three administrations, including President Trump administration, They have two questions that I have really seen Washington ask these two questions. How can they help Afghan people? And there is a sincerity in that question in Washington, Mr. Ambassadors. That really both President Bush, President Obama teams, and also President Trump's team, really they're asking this question, how can the United States help Afghan people, Afghanistan? And that is a sincerity is there. And also the second question is that how can the United States succeed in Afghanistan? And I think these two questions are interrelated and both are reinforcing each other. And as part of that engaging with the new team, we have had a number of interactions at AISS to help particularly our Afghan colleagues to have a better understanding of United States-Afghanistan relationship, and also provide an opportunity for our American colleagues to interact with the Afghan colleagues. And I hope today also bring us closer towards that two fundamental objectives that we want United States to succeed in Afghanistan, and we know that United States success in Afghanistan means helping Afghan people. Yes. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, very warm welcome to the AISS, and many thanks, Mr. Ambassador. Please.
Very good. Great to be here at the Institute, and really want to salute and commend Dawood for the great work he does with this Institute, because it's a great place to bring people who are interested in strategic studies and to have a very honest discussion of the issues. And that's what I hope to have with you. So maybe I'll have some brief remarks, and then we can engage in a good discussion. But again, first of all, let me say hi to Dr. Spanta, a great friend of mine from the last time that I served here in Afghanistan, and a great Afghan. And I know that while he is sometimes a critic of my country, I know he's a friend of the United States, and we value very much that friendship. And the same thing with Minister Amarullah Saleh, another great friend, personal friend of mine, and a great friend of the United States. Thank you for being here. You honor me with your presence. I really mean that in all. Very, very prominent group. I'm humbled to be here, okay? Look, you know, I've been here 6 months. I came, as you know, in between administrations. I was asked by Secretary Kerry to come, and very much in between administrations. And when I was asked, you know, I didn't hesitate. I'm at a late stage of my career. I've been in the U.S. diplomatic service 36 years, so it's been sort of at the sunset, and I was actually planning on moving to the private sector. But when this opportunity came, I decided I immediately accepted, because I believe Afghanistan is critically important country in the world. Afghanistan is about global peace. It's a global issue. It's not a regional issue. It's not an issue about Afghanistan. It's an issue that impacts on the entire world, and that the United States has core interests in this country. And we always need to work very hard to make sure that we get our policy right. So I enthusiastically accepted the assignment, and been proud to again serve once again in Afghanistan. Again, we have now a new administration. As Dawood mentioned, we have been in the last several months in a policy review process, which is normal. But again, the interesting thing is that Afghanistan has been one of the first countries where the new administration conducted its policy review, which again, although it's not concluded, it's one of the first issues that the administration has tackled on the national security side. So there's been a tremendous amount of discussion within our interagency and the new administration to put together an integrated strategy that involves the Department of Defense, the State Department, clearly coordinated by the National Security Council, the President's staff, as well as the other elements, you know, the development piece, USAID, Department of Commerce. It's been a government-wide review, and I think that this review is very far advanced. But what we have now, because everybody's been waited for, you know, bated breath, the reality is that the administration continues its review because it's looking at Afghanistan within a broader context of the region. That for too long, you know, we've looked at Afghanistan sort of in isolation. We've put a lot of focus in previous administrations, and by the way, as a career diplomat, I'm not detaching myself neither from the Bush administration or the Obama. I served them. I was one of the people involved in the policy. But I can tell you that this administration is a lot more focused on fitting Afghanistan into the broader context of the region, the broader regional context. And a lot of the discussions that are going on right now involve that. You know, I think Pakistan is, as you know, a critical element. And so I think there's a lot of thought in the administration being given to getting our policy right in Pakistan. Pakistan is a very complicated country, you know, and again, is a country that has a direct impact on Afghanistan. So a lot of thought being given on Pakistan. You know, in terms of my instructions, and like again, this doesn't change between administrations, Obama administration and the Trump administration, is very much, you know, that we support the government of Afghanistan. Our policy is to support the national unity government, and that, you know, that is very much our policy. But it's at the same time, it's a policy of reaching out broadly to all Afghans. You know, we have a relationship with the government, but we also have a relationship and we're accountable to the Afghan people. So a job of a diplomat and my entire team in the embassy is we're talking to hundreds of Afghans every day. Yes, within the government, managing the day-to-day bilateral relationship, but also more broadly trying to talk to people outside of government, political opposition groups, civil society, women's groups, and get a real understanding of what's happening in this society. You know, one thing I wanted to mention is that, you know, again, Afghanistan is going through difficult times. It's a complicated time. Security situation is difficult. We know, well, you know, just go back to May 31 and the, you know, devastating bombing attack right outside the Green Zone. And, you know, the death of, I believe it's over 150 Afghan civilians, you know, hundreds of people wounded. You know, cowardly attack, you know, terrible. I know what a blow it's been to this city, the great city of Kabul. It was also a big blow to us. I lost 10 Afghan security personnel that have worked for us. They've been with us for a long time. They're great Afghans. And they were right at the point of the explosion. You know, you have the German embassy at that circle, that German Y, but then you have Camp Ager. And Camp Agers, we continue to have a lease on that, so I have a number of security people who were there. So I had 10 of my brave Afghan security staff killed, and we had 36 wounded, including 11 of our American staff. And it's just something, thank God, you know, I didn't lose any of my American staff, but again, we were part of that. And so were many of our, you know, the embassies were affected. But I just, again, for me and for us and for my president, what happened is just a reaffirmation of why we must stay here. You know, because we are facing a very, very bad enemy. It's a resilient enemy, but it's a very evil enemy. And it's just a reaffirmation of why we need to be together in this fight and the importance, because Afghanistan is on the front lines of the fight against global terrorism. You are taking here, we're supporting you in a very strong way, I believe, but you're taking 99% of the fight and 99% of the suffering. And people need to be mindful. And this is a partnership where you're in the lead in the fight. But I want to just say that despite all the problems, you know, when you look back, you know, Afghanistan has still made amazing progress. When you go back to what this country was like in 2001, I remember one of the great American diplomats of his time, Ryan Crocker, a good friend of Dr. Sponta's. You know, when I came here to serve as one of his deputies back in 2012, he told me he came here in November of 2001 as returning with several hundred Marines right after September 11 to reopen our embassy. And he described to me when I met him in my meeting with him in May of 2012, what Kabul looked like when he came here at the end of 2001, a city completely destroyed, the devastation, the misery, the suffering of the people. And he described it as Dantesque. It was a Dantesque scene. It was something akin to going to Europe, the ruins of Europe after World War II. And as he traveled around the country in 2001 and 2002, he saw that. He saw the devastation and the suffering. And when he came back as ambassador 10 years later in 2001, he was just shocked by how in a really short period of time, and in the midst of conflict, how much progress Afghanistan had achieved. And again, my country, my government is very proud to have been part of that. Again, the vast amount of credit goes to the Afghan people. But I think the United States and members of your friends in the international community were able to give you a little bit of space in the security area, in the political realm, in the economic realm, for you to have a chance to stand up and begin to rebuild your country. And you've done it in a remarkable way. There was no country here in 2001. This was like Taliban. Afghanistan was like North Korea. You ever open it up? It was a closed society. It was run by a very extremist sect of people who had closed Afghanistan off from the world. Today, Afghanistan is a completely different, it's a country. It has, with all of its problems, with all of its dysfunction, with the corruption and everything we know, it's still a country that has a real government. It has had elections. It has chambers of commerce. It has a parliament. You can criticize it all you want. It has made vast strides in individual rights, the rights of women. Women in this country back in the Taliban time were in a dark age when you looked at it. And again, the gains in health and education. Back in 2001, there were something like 600,000 students in the school system, from kindergarten through university. Women were not in the public school system, as we know. Today, there are 8.5 million young people in Afghanistan studying K through university. And 40% of those, 40% of those are women. And that's the future. Think of the young people. There's a whole generation of young people being educated right now. And that's something that the terrorists and the Taliban are not going to be able to stop. This is a very powerful force. And the same thing in health. The reality is there was no health system that existed in Afghanistan in 2001. It was non-existent. There were volunteer doctors that were there in a very humanitarian way, helping people, but it didn't exist. Today you have a health system. It has a long way to go. We all know that. And it has great deficiencies. But 60% of Afghans today are a 45-minute walk from a clinic. And two indicators that show you the dramatic change in the health situation in the country is infant mortality rates, which have declined significantly in the last 15 years, and maternal mortality rates. These are two indicators that are at a very human level of that the situation has improved a lot. And I always say communications. This country had a couple of thousand telephones in 2001. Today there are 23 million telephones in this country, a country of 30 million people. There's been a revolution in communications. So I remember in my previous posts, I'd be rattling around with my security in some rural area, and you would see a woman in some rural part of Afghanistan, completely covered, but she had a cell phone. She was talking. She was communicating. She is connecting with other Afghans. So there's been a revolution in communication. So you deserve the credit. The Afghan people are strong. There's nothing new about the struggle in Afghanistan. This is as old as history itself. It is a struggle. It's very elemental. We can talk about the complexities of the strategy, and we'll do that in the Q&A. But it's pretty basic. It's about, a vast number of people, the vast majority of Afghans, who the only thing they want to do is they want to build a better life for themselves and rebuild their country after decades of suffering. And it's a very powerful force, because the Afghan people are very powerful as a force of people. You're very brave, you're very resilient. And then you have a small number of very extremist people who are very destructive. Human nature, the human heart, has that element of destruction. And that's what the fight is really all about. And it's as old as history itself, and as old as humanity. And so, but again, Afghanistan is a focal point of this struggle we face against terrorism and extremists. And I just want to make sure that you all know, with my new president and the new administration, we're not going anywhere. we're going to stay right here. We're not focused on any timeline. We're going to stay here as long as it takes to do the job. And again, the doing the job is you, because at the end of the day, you're out in the front lines, and our job is to support you and enable you, and we will continue to do that. You know, we are, again, I'm very hopeful that come the end of next month, we will conclude our policy review. I know some people, again, have been anxious, but I think it'll be a policy review that will be very well thought out, and again, it completely encompasses the region. But in the meantime, we remain very heavily engaged, okay? I mean, we have one of the largest development programs in the world here in Afghanistan. We have the second or third largest embassy in the world. I have 5,000 people under Chief of Mission Authority. And we represent 23 different U.S. government agencies. And we do everything. We have development programs of every kind. We work in terms of rule of law, the justice sector, and as well as, obviously, the key of security. You know, and our job, as you know, is twofold, post-bilateral security agreement. One, first and foremost, is to enable the Afghan National Defense Forces to be able to defend their country against its enemies, and to be able to also strike at our common enemies, particularly those transnational groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS-K. And so we maintain a train, advise, and assist force, and we also maintain a special forces where we are directly involved in the fight. As you know, there's been a tremendous fighting going on. It's going on right now in eastern and southern Nangarhar, where we've really taken the fight to ISIS-K, and that's an important part. But we've also done, the bulk of our work is really, again, to enable the ANDSF. And speaking of the ANDSF, you know, coming back from my time here in 2012, 2013, so I was away for 4 years. I'll be very honest with you. I am very impressed by the ANDSF. I remember when I was here, and we spoke, and I was the senior person in the field working with Minister Spanta as we launched the bilateral security agreement negotiations. And we would wonder, you know, we were now ending our direct combat role. And a military that didn't exist 10 years before, did not exist, it's a new military, how they would be able to take the fight to the Taliban when they were on their own. And we felt we had a good plan, but there were many, many question marks. So when I come back, I think the ANDSF, with all of its flaws, and we know what those flaws are, they've been in the fight. They have been in the fight, and if you look at the 2015 fighting season, the 2016 fighting season, they have fought and defended their country. And that, you know, they have not run. They have not, you look at a little bit about in 2014 in the ISIS campaign in Iraq, and you saw that ISIS was able to sweep through a third of Iraq's territory. And it was done, and if you looked at the Iraqi casualty figures, the army was relatively small. So ISIS was able to take a lot of territory, and the casualty figures were small. So what it tells you is there wasn't that much fighting going on. In Afghanistan, you've taken the casualties because you've been toe-to-toe with the enemy. And so our job is to make you stronger and stronger all of the time. And I can talk right now about what some of the things that the Trump administration has already done. Doesn't need a policy review to do that. You know, we have, as you know, we have approved, our Congress has approved the funding for the Afghan Air Force expansion project. And that Congress has allocated the first $815 million, the first tranche, which will add 165 new airframes and completely modernize the Afghan Air Force. Because the Russian equipment, the Mi-17s, are really running to the end of their operational life. And really the way to get the Afghan Air Force to the next level in terms of both close air support as well as mobility of the force requires getting the U.S. air assets, and that's in track. Also, General Nicholson's very much working with the Government of National Unity. This year they will double the size of the special forces of Afghanistan. Because as you know, the 4-year roadmap that President Ghani has launched is very much focused on the need to double the size of the special forces, because it's the most effective, the most offensive-oriented part of the ANA. And this year we will double the number of cadets that graduate. So again, the doubling of the special forces is very much on track under the Trump administration, and we're supporting that. As you know, the president extended General Nicholson's authorities that gives him ability for strategic effect, to use our air power in support of, and our special forces in support of the ANDSF. And it's been used to very good effect in the current fighting season. And remember, President Obama had given those new authorities to General Nicholson a year ago. They were for 12 months. President Trump has given it, there's no timeline on it. It is an open-ended for his authorities. And also, as we've heard, the President has granted Secretary Mattis the FMLN so he can determine the amount of troops that he will need. If the commander feels that he needs more, again, what General Nicholson's been requesting is a modest amount of more advisors. And so that authority has been given to the Secretary of Defense. So right there, when you talk about the core security issues, there are 3 or 4 measures right there that shows the commitment of President Trump and his administration to stand by you. As I said, we're really not going anywhere. Let me just touch very briefly on a couple of issues, and then we'll turn it over to Q's and A's. You know, again, first of all, to maintain political stability in this country, you need to support the government that exists. And I know some people disagree with the concept of the national unity government, but it's something that was a concept, I know, that where there was a lot of contribution from senior members of the Obama administration in helping broker the political agreement between Mr. Ghani and Mr. Abdullah, but is also something that is supported by the current government. And we believe that very much the center of gravity, political center of gravity of Afghanistan begins with these 2 men. And we will continue to support this government until its last day in office. But the other thing is, at the same time, is the importance of elections. You know, it's very important that there's nothing that more regenerates governance than to have regularly scheduled elections. So my government very much supports, and I've mentioned and reiterated in many occasions, you know, elections to be held, parliamentary elections as soon as possible, and presidential elections, because the Afghan people have a right. The Afghan political class has an obligation under the Afghan constitution to go to the people in regularly scheduled intervals and go to them and let them make the final word. Remember, in a democracy, the people have the final word, not the rulers. The people in the end have the final word. So we will support that, and we will be looking at the criticality of having better elections, significantly better elections than happened in 2014. Remember, we all know that the national unity government was born in, using a Christian term, in electoral original sin. We know that the government exists because it was a flawed election, okay? We'll leave it at that. So I think there's a commitment on the part of the national unity government, that must be significantly better elections, more transparent, significant reduction in fraud, both parliamentary elections and even more so for the presidential election. And then finally, I just mentioned on the economic side, you know, we will stay very. So, and then let me just end by simply saying one thing. The reality is that there's no military solution to be had. I mean, there really isn't. I mean, there's no physical military victory to be had. So that's something I think we need to be mindful of. However, at the same time, we don't see any possibility for the Taliban to win a strategic military victory. They are not going to seize Kabul. They're not going to take Mazar or Jalalabad or Herat or Kandahar. They don't have the physical force, and we will continue to support the ANDSF and enable it in every way. So the Taliban and our common enemies have one choice. They can either continue the fight, which they probably can, as I said, continue killing their fellow Afghans, or finally realize that the only way is for them to sit at the table in what will be an Afghan-owned, Afghan-led process that will result in a political settlement so Afghanistan can finally move on, which is what all Afghans want. But again, that has to be done consistent with your constitution and consistent without giving up the gains that you have achieved with so much blood and that we've achieved together with so much blood and treasure in the last 15, 16 years. I'm an optimist. I believe if we stand firm, if we send the message back to the leadership that we're not walking away, we believe that, reason will prevail and we will be able to get on with hopefully a peace process in the future. Again, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be back in Afghanistan.